Charles Bukowski's poetry isn't just literature. It's a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the human soul, a rebellion against the polished facades of modern life. I am all about embracing the messy, beautiful truth of existence, and Bukowski's work has been a guiding light in that matter. His poetry speaks to soul seekers, those 35-year-olds who feel lost in a world that demands conformity, a world I often critique as being bound by heavenly laws. Bukowski's words strip away those societal expectations, revealing the grit and grace beneath. In this deep dive, I'll explore Charles Bukowski's poetry, focusing on the literary movement of dirty realism poetry, the unparalleled beauty of the Bluebird poem, and Bukowski's unique voice that continues to resonate today. I'll also share my personal journey with his work, from my first Bukowski book, Love is a Dog from Hell, to the moment my wife gifted me The Last Night of the Earth poems, turning me into a lifelong fan. Along the way, I've woven Bukowski's poetry into my music poetry shows, creating experiences that honor his legacy and connect with others who crave authenticity. We'll also draw subtle comparisons to other 20th century poets like Allen Ginsberg, Sylvia Plath, and Dylan Thomas, whose voices shaped the poetic landscape in their own way. Whether you're a Bukowski enthusiast or new to his raw genius, this exploration is for you. Charles Bukowski, the voice of the unseen. Charles Bukowski, born in 1920 in Andernach, Germany, and raised in Los Angeles, wasn't your typical poet. His life was marked by hardship, an abusive father, poverty, and a lifelong struggle with alcoholism. Yet from this chaos, Bukowski crafted a voice that's as raw as it is profound. Bukowski's unique voice is conversational, unapologetic, and deeply personal, rejecting the upper-crust traditions of poetry for something far more real. Bukowski wrote for the unseen, the drunks, the dreamers, the broken-hearted. His poetry captures the essence of Los Angeles's underbelly, dive bars, racetracks, and fleeting love affairs. Lines like, "We are always asked to understand the other person's viewpoint, no matter how outdated, foolish, or obnoxious. From the people look like flowers at last," cut through pretense with brutal honesty. This authenticity is what makes Charles Bukowski's poetry a cultural touchstone for those who feel out of place in a world obsessed with perfection. Compare Bukowski's voice to Allen Ginsberg, another 20th century giant whose howl roared against societal conformity. While Ginsberg's work is a collective outcry, often steeped in the Beat generation's communal ethos, Bukowski's poetry is fiercely individualistic, focusing on personal survival in a harsh world. Ginsberg once reviewed Bukowski's Empty Mirror, offering left-handed compliments, but appreciating his rawness. Bukowski, however, distanced himself from the Beats, calling their hipster antics too performative. This contrast highlights Bukowski's unique ability to speak directly to the individual soul, unencumbered by movements or manifestos. For me, Bukowski's voice is a rebellion against the heavenly laws I've always questioned, those societal rules that tell us how to feel, love, and live. His words give permission to embrace the chaos of being human, to find beauty in the flaws. As someone who creates for soul seekers, I see Bukowski as a kindred spirit, a poet who speaks directly to the heart. Dirty realism, the grit and grace of Bukowski's poetry. Bukowski is often credited with pioneering dirty realism poetry, a literary movement that focuses on the unvarnished lives of the working class and marginalized. Unlike traditional poetry that might romanticize life with flowery metaphors, dirty realism is stark, direct, and unflinching. Bukowski's poems are filled with the grit of everyday struggles, drunks in dive bars, lonely souls in cheap motels, and lovers grappling with betrayal. Consider a line from Love is a Dog from Hell. There is a loneliness in this world so great that you can see it in the slow movement of the hands of a clock. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a visceral image that captures the weight of isolation in a way that's both universal and deeply personal. Dirty realism poetry doesn't shy away from life's ugliness. It finds poetry in the mundane, the broken, the real. Contrast this with Sylvia Plath, whose poetry also delves into raw emotion, but through a more surreal psychological lens. Plath's work, like Ariel, often uses metaphor to explore the terrifying human mind, as critic Newman noted, with references to historical traumas like Auschwitz. Bukowski, however, grounds his pain in the tangible: clock hands, bar stools, and empty bottles. While Plath's intensity is cerebral, Bukowski's is visceral, making dirty realism a distinct lens that prioritizes lived experience over abstraction. I've always believed that true art comes from embracing the messy parts of life, the parts society tells us to hide. Bukowski's dirty realism is a reminder that there's beauty in the grit, a spark of humanity in even the darkest moments. For soul seekers, whether they're painters, architects, or dreamers, Bukowski's poetry offers a space to feel seen, to reject conformity, and to create from a place of truth. Among Bukowski's thousands of poems, Bluebird stands out as a masterpiece, a delicate yet devastating exploration of vulnerability and repression. Published in The Last Night of the Earth poems, the poem feels like a whispered confession. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too tough for him, I say. Stay in there. I'm not going to let anybody see you. In my opinion, Bluebird is one of the most beautiful poems ever written, and here's why. It reveals a side of Bukowski that's often hidden beneath his hard-drinking, womanizing persona. The bluebird symbolizes his vulnerability, his capacity for love and gentleness, qualities he feels he must suppress to survive a harsh world. I only let him out at night sometimes, when everybody's asleep, Bukowski admits, revealing moments of private tenderness when the world isn't watching. Compare Bluebird to Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, another 20th century gem that wrestles with inner conflict. Thomas's poem is a fiery plea to rage against the dying of the light, a public outcry against mortality. Bukowski's Bluebird, however, is an intimate confession, a quiet struggle between toughness and tenderness. While Thomas's voice is commanding, Bukowski's is confessional, making Bluebird a uniquely personal exploration of vulnerability. What makes Bluebird timeless is its universality. We all have a bluebird, a part of ourselves we hide out of fear or shame. For me, this poem is a call to let that bluebird sing, to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength. Bukowski's ability to balance his tough exterior with this tender confession is what makes the Bluebird poem analysis so compelling. It's a reminder that even in a world that demands hardness, there's beauty and softness in the parts of us we keep hidden. It is also a poetic statement that Bluebird is the beautiful part of the poet's soul, a part that nobody will ever know that is there. My relationship with Charles Bukowski's poetry began in my early 20s with Love is a Dog from Hell, a collection that grabbed me with its brutal yet poetic title. I was navigating heartbreak at the time, and Bukowski's words felt like a mirror to my soul. Lines like "All lovers betray" hit hard, exposing the jagged edges of love in a way I'd never seen before. It was the first book that showed me poetry could be raw, real, and unapologetic, a far cry from the flowery verses I'd been taught in school. Years later, on the first birthday I celebrated with my girlfriend, now my wife, she gifted me The Last Night of the Earth poems. I remember unwrapping the book, its cover a bit worn from her own reading, and diving into Bluebird that night. It was a revelation. A poem that spoke to the parts of me I'd kept hidden, the parts I was afraid to show even to her. That gift deepened our connection as we spent hours discussing Bukowski's life, his words, and how his poetry reflected our own struggles to live authentically in a world that often demands conformity. I've crafted music, poetry, and performance shows tailored around his words, blending lines from Bluebird and Love is a Dog from Hell with original songs to create immersive experiences for soul seekers. These shows are my rebellion against the polished, commercial art that dominates today's world, a way to honor Bukowski's legacy and connect with others who feel lost, just as I once did. Reciting Bukowski's poetry on stage, I feel the weight of his words, the untamed fire within, and I see that same fire reflected in the eyes of my audience. Bukowski's unique voice remains as relevant today as it was in the 20th century. In a world obsessed with perfection, curated social media feeds, unattainable standards, and the pressure to have it all together, Bukowski's poetry is a rebellion. He reminds us that it's okay to be broken, to feel deeply, to live on the fringes. His dirty realism cuts through the noise, offering a space for those who don't fit into society's mold. Contrast this with Ginsberg's communal rebellion or Plath's psychological intensity. While Ginsberg's howl rallied a generation against conformity, and Plath's aerial delved into the mind's darkest corners, Bukowski's poetry is a solitary act of defiance, a personal refusal to bow to societal norms. His voice is less about changing the world and more about surviving it, a naked, honest reflection of the human condition. For true artists, Bukowski's work is a call to create without fear. His poetry encourages us to reject the heavenly laws that dictate how we should live and instead forge our own paths. Whether it's through painting, designing, or writing, Bukowski's voice inspires us to let our bluebird sing, to embrace our vulnerabilities, and to find beauty in the chaos of our lives. Charles Bukowski's poetry is more than art. It's a lifeline for those who feel the weight of the world's expectations. Through the lens of dirty realism poetry, he captures the beauty in the grit, the poetry in the pain. His unique voice, raw and unfiltered, speaks to the soul in a way few poets can, standing apart from the collective cries of Ginsberg, the psychological depths of Plath, and the fiery pleas of Dylan Thomas. And in Bluebird, Bukowski gives us a timeless gift, a reminder to embrace our vulnerabilities, and ultimately even the supreme vulnerability, the fact that we all are mortals. He dares us to let our hidden selves shine, even in a world that demands, or at least seems to demand, toughness. For me, Bukowski's poetry has been a constant companion, a source of inspiration for my music poetry shows, a reflection of my own struggles, and a connection to those I love. From Love is a Dog from Hell to The Last Night of the Earth poems, his words have shaped my creative journey, reminding me to live authentically, to defy conformity, and to create from the soul. So, soul seekers, I leave you with this. Let your bluebird sing. What ignites your untamed fire? Share your truth in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story.